Hello everyone, this is Midlife Music Teacher and I'm Mrs. G. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about working with a student teacher. So let's take it from the top. During the course of my career, I've worked with 16 student teachers. When I was first asked to do this, I was honored to do it. It was through the college that I had attended and the program that I had gone through and the professors that I myself had had. And for them to reach out to me and ask if I would be willing to take a student teacher, of course, I said yes. I was honored. That first student teacher that I worked with, little to no idea what I was doing. I did attend the training session, the required training session on working with student teachers and assessing them and evaluating them. You are their mentor. You are not only a cooperating teacher, but you're mentoring them in this final step before they become a music educator themselves or any kind of educator themselves. And so it is a task that is not meant for everyone. There's two things that I always keep in mind when working with a student teacher. And number one is the student teacher is not you. They have their own set of strengths. They have their own ideas of what they would like to do and their own ways of doing it. And that as a mentor to a student teacher, that as a cooperating teacher for a student teacher is what you need to help them focus on. They're not up there to be a carbon copy of you. They're up there to figure out how to do this for themselves. And number two, the second thing that is important to note is that this is not their job. This is your job. It's your job. They are coming in and doing an internship basically with you. They are not getting paid. They're most likely still paying their own tuition to attend a college, but to be in your classroom teaching your students. There are certain situations where I feel like people might take advantage of a student teacher in regards of just kind of dumping everything on them and just stepping back. And that's not fair. It's not fair. You are being paid. This is your job. I tell student teachers, I'm like, this is my job. This is my job. I'm the music teacher here. If there's ever a day where you feel completely overwhelmed or you don't feel good or you feel like, I just don't know if I can teach this class today, please let me know. Don't be shy about that. And honestly, I've never had a student teacher take advantage of that. Being open and honest with them about, listen, if you are ever overwhelmed, please tell me. In this day and age too, with mental health and everything, I think it's important. I share that with the student teacher. Listen, you just let me know. This is my job. Don't feel like you're going to be putting me out if you say, I really don't know if I can teach this class today. Or could I just, take over after lunchtime or something? And honestly, I've never, ever had a student teacher take advantage of that. There have been times when they say, could you help me with this or whatever? Or could you sit next to so-and-so? And that's fine. But I've never had a student teacher just be like, hey, you know what? I don't want to do this. Ultimately, I have to evaluate them on all of that anyway. And they do want to set a good example. So those are some of the things. If you are somebody that doesn't like to give up control of things, I don't let my student teacher just take over on the first day. Hey, you've had all your training. There you go. That's not fair to just throw them to the wolves like that. And I will share with you my day-by-day, week-by-week process that I use with a student teacher. However, there is a time when you do have to step back, sit in the back of the room, and kind of let things happen the way they need to happen. And unless it's completely egregious or unsafe, I do not step in. They need to have that experience of, and the kids sometimes will look at me, oh, Mrs. G isn't going to do anything about this, because I need to see how the student teacher is going to handle it, so they can understand what it's like when, you're up there alone. I'm not going to be there when you have your job. So it is a process, a step-by-step process. And so I'll share with you now how I introduce the student teacher to the students, and how I gradually get them in front of the students, and how I gradually help them to take over teaching my lessons. Prior to working with the student teacher, I like to make sure that I've had an opportunity to meet them, either via Zoom or a Google Meet or some kind of meeting where they can ask me questions. Mostly those questions are about contractual hours and my schedule and things like that. I can ask them some questions about previous experience and why they chose the college or university that they chose to go to, and what's their favorite thing maybe that they've learned so far leading up to this student teaching experience. Prior to the student teacher coming, I also create a binder for them. And in the binder, I include all kinds of things like my schedule, the calendar, the important dates, a map of the school, a little information on some of the procedures. I give them copies of my class lists and my seating charts. I print out for them my lesson plans that they're going to watch me teach that first day or two. On day one, I give them the binder. We go through it. We look at the things in the binder and we talk about that. I give my student teachers an introduction to the people in the office staff, the administrators. Then we usually take a tour of the school, and one of the things that I like to point out the most is where all the bathrooms are. That's important to know. The day one, they are mostly doing observations, observing, taking notes, making observations about how the classes run, typically how, I manage the flow of the lessons so that they can get a feel for that.
I also introduce my student teachers to the specials team, and we eat lunch together every single day, and oftentimes we discuss the uniqueness of our positions within the elementary school.
Day two, we'll debrief about how day one went. What are they thinking, feeling? I encourage them, even on day one, to sit in with the students and participate with them so that, the kids are more familiar with them. This is so-and-so who's going to be our guest music teacher. And usually within the third or fourth, if there's a fifth day, I will have them get up and do a small portion of my lesson. So a song or an activity or something, so that they can start getting up in front of the students and the students can start recognizing them as another teacher in the room. So that's how the first week kind of goes. Week two, I'll have the student teacher begin to teach mini lessons. At least that's what I call them, mini lessons, where they will write out an objective, a song or a game they want to teach, and how they're going to teach it, the steps for teaching it, the questions they're going to ask the students, how they're going to manage that time. And so I call it a mini lesson because it should probably take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes of the class, maybe even 20. So it's not even really half the lesson. It's just a little mini. They're going to get up and teach something that they created themselves. And we talk about this and what class they want to do it for, or could they do it for multiple grade levels. So getting them up in front of the students and getting them to plan out and write their own mini lesson to get started. By week 3, they need to be taking on at least one full grade level. So they need to write a full lesson for, say, a second grade class. And one of the reasons they have to start doing this is because the college supervisor tends to come in and do their first observation either week 3 or week 4. And so they have to have had that lesson planning and that experience of teaching a full lesson at least to one grade level and have practiced doing that before they are observed by their college supervisor. So by week 3, they're doing at least one grade level's full lesson. Week 4, they add another 1 or 2 grade levels to teaching the full lesson, while the other grade levels will continue to split, where I'll do most of it and they'll do a mini lesson. And so basically building it up. So they're not teaching the entire schedule right away. It's a lot. My schedule is a lot. I teach 6 classes a day, and my prep period is first thing in the morning, and it's go, 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 go pretty much all day. You're trying to encourage them to be an educator in this day and age where less and less people are going into this field. You want to encourage them. So I don't want to throw everything at them. I am going to give them a realistic experience, but not dumping it all on them all at once. Also, on week 4 is usually a time where I have to give my first formal observation for the student teacher through the college or university. Week 5, they should be doing almost all of the lesson planning, if not all of it, depending on how long they're with me. If they're only there with me for 6 weeks, then week 5, they have to be doing all of it. Week 6, they really have to be doing all of it. If they're with me for 7 weeks, then week 5 can still kind of be a buffer. But 2 weeks, they really should have 2 weeks where they are teaching the entirety of your schedule so that they know what kind of energy and mental load and everything that it takes to do this job.
If I have a student teacher with me for 7 weeks or more, I usually use the last week as a chance for them to give the schedule back to me and a chance for them to observe in other classrooms.
Week 6 or 7, whatever their last week is where they're with me, is when I have to complete their formal evaluation. There's usually a content knowledge portion of evaluating a student teacher. There might be like a professional disposition kind of evaluation that you might have to do. And so I try to work on those evaluations on their last week teaching all the students. So they're giving the direct instruction and I'm working on those evaluations. So use my time wisely as well when I'm not giving the direct instruction. And then on their last day with me, we have a celebration. I always get my student teacher a parting gift. We eat lunch with all the other specials teachers, so we'll have some kind of treat, a cake or something like that. And one of the things I always gift my student teachers before they leave this placement with me is a letter of recommendation with copies so that they have that and they don't have to come and ask me for it, that it is already given to them. Once the student teacher leaves, technically your job is not necessarily over because it is typical for a student teacher to place your name as a reference on any applications that they might make. So this is something to also think about if you're going to take a student teacher, is preparing for those phone calls that you'll get from districts who want to hire this person as a teacher for their district. And so as I have answered many of those phone calls, these are the typical questions that you'd be asked. So prepare yourself for answering these questions. One of the questions they always ask is, what is this candidate's strengths? This should be easy because I always take from my overall comments on my final evaluation. I take those overall comments, which talk mostly about their strengths. And those overall comments about their strengths, I also put in the letter of recommendation. And of course, that's what I'm going to refer to when I'm having a phone conversation with a principal or superintendent or someone from a district who's looking at hiring this person. Another question that typically gets asked is, what does this candidate feel is their area of growth? Or what do you feel is this candidate's area of growth? And so I try to make sure that I've asked my student teachers what they feel their area of growth is. I know from my experience with them what they should be saying is their area of growth. So I tend to ask them and see if they respond in the same way that I would suggest. If it doesn't align, if what I feel their area of growth is and what they feel their area of growth is doesn't align, we have a discussion about it. But typically it does align. They know what they need to work on. And, I tell them, if you were here for another, 2 or 3 months, what would you feel you would want to work on the most? If this was your job, what would you feel you want to work on the most? And just making sure that they're reflective on that so that when a district calls me, I can say, this candidate is very reflective. They're very open about knowing that this is an area of growth for them, and they are doing their best to try to improve in this area, that they know that this is an area of growth for them. I think that's important. Districts want to know that a candidate already knows that they have room for improvement, so that, you know, there's somebody that they can work with. And then one of the last questions that they'll ask is, if there was a position open in your district, would you hire this person? And you have to answer yes to that. If you wrote this candidate a letter of recommendation, then you have to say yes. Why would you say no? If there was someone that you would answer no, then that would be someone you would not write a letter of recommendation for. And if you would not write a letter of recommendation for a student teacher, then that student teacher shouldn't have made it all 7 weeks with you. That should have been addressed back in week 2 or 3, maybe even 4. But if a student teacher is not ready, if you wouldn't write them a letter of recommendation, then the college and university need to know that, so that they can go back and reflect on what they have to work on. So that's some of what I do when I'm working with a student teacher. I hope that you found this video informative. Maybe it's helpful for you if you are thinking about taking a student teacher, or maybe you are about to enter student teaching and you want to know a little bit about what it's like. That's what it's like with me as a clinical educator and my experiences. And I'm sure I will be assigned more student teachers in the future. I just love being able to mentor the next generation of music educators. It's an honor, and I don't take this honor lightly. So with that, we'll end on a high note. Please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.